Okay, this is part 2 of me reading a writing that God had me write on our garments and being clothed in white, or us being the bride of Christ. Please go watch part 1 first because it gives a lot of good details and explanation on how we can soil these garments. But the second part will focus on how can we be clothed in white even while we live here on this earth. Okay, so how are we clothed in these pure white vestments, though? It comes through allowing Christ to clothe us in true righteousness. Isaiah 61:10 and Job 29:14 both show us that righteousness is our garments, and one says, I put on righteousness and it clothed me. And the other one says, he has wrapped me in a robe of righteousness. Revelation 19:7-9 tells us that we as a people have to make ourselves ready for Christ to come. It says, let us rejoice and exult and give him glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. These are the people who chose to be sanctified. Okay, and it continues on with, it was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, pure, bright and pure, no blemishes, right? For the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints. And the saints are anybody who is truly abiding in Christ. These deeds spoken of is simply following the voice of God and what they were to do on this earth. No matter what they assumed, not what they assumed on how they should obey God, but being guided by him in all they did to glorify him. And it finishes off with, blessed are those invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb, for these are the true words of God. As we obey, we grow in righteousness because he walks us out of our unknown sin and into being made in his image further. As we obey, we also see the fruits of the Spirit naturally start working through us with more ease, truly loving those as he commanded us to love them, not as we believe we should, because our love is tainted. His love is pure. Without him, we are blind to our faults and cannot be in true obedience or walk in righteousness. If we choose not to obey him and choose not to crucify our flesh when we know what we are meant to do, we soil these garments. We find that in James 4:17, because if we know what we're meant to do and we do not do it, it is sin. The enemy tempts us in our flesh and walks us out of the will of God. If we choose to give in and not be corrected, we will be found unclean or completely naked, without any righteousness if it continues to that point when Jesus returns. Revelation 16:15, behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that keeps watch and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. This passage shows us that we have to actively choose to walk in righteousness and crucify our flesh, or we can lose our spiritual garments that keep us. Yet many are walking around thinking they are rich in faith in Christ, spiritually right before God, but they are not. Revelation 3:17, because you say, I am rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing, and you do not know that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. We have to be honest with ourselves on where we stand in faith, lest we fall. 1 Corinthians 10:12, Paul warns us that anyone who thinks he stands, take heed lest he falls. In Revelation 3:4-5, we see that only those who are found worthy walk in white will never have their names blotted out of the book of life. So that wording right there says we can have it blotted out. And only a few are able to do this, because remember in Matthew 17:13-14, it talks about how the path to life is narrow and few find it. So reading Revelation 3:4-5, yet you still have a few, that's a key word, a few names in Sardis who have not soiled their garments, and they will walk in white with me, for they are worthy. The one who conquers will be clothed thus in white garments, and I will never blot his name out of the book of life. We have to conquer our flesh and the enemy in order to be worthy. It can be done here while on this earth. It isn't easy, but God gives us the grace and strength to get there as we do his will. Okay? So God tells us he will never leave us nor forsake us. But the context of those passages is him telling people to go out and defeat the enemy, to go out and do his will. And that while we go out and do it, he will not leave us nor forsake us, no matter how bad the situation looks. One of those times, one of those passages is him telling Joshua to go and take the land, to defeat the enemy and take the land. And God tells him, I will never leave you nor forsake you during that time, because the enemy's hard to fight. Situations look dire, right? And he's telling us, you continue in my will, and I will be next to you. I will be fighting next to you. I will be encouraging you. I will grow you. I will love you, right? Although battling the enemy in our flesh is hard, God gets us through it. He does not give grace to the lazy, though, because the lazy people cannot be trusted to finish a task as directed. That's not only in real life with just going to work or school, whatever the case may be, right? That's a spiritual concept. The Bible tells us that those who are unfaithful with little will be unfaithful with much, but those who are faithful in much will be faithful, or in little will be faithful in much, right? So if you're not even being fully faithful in the little, you're not going to gain further in Christ. And in fact, you're not fully obeying Christ, and that's considered rebellion. If you're not fully obeying him as he commands, if you're doing it the way you want to, that's a form of rebellion. We have to be willing to put forth a genuine effort in conquering our flesh and the enemy to be found worthy. The enemy will tempt you in your flesh to get out of the will of God, because he is out to kill, steal, and destroy. So he will tempt you to get angry with someone and yell at them. He will tempt you to hold resentment and unforgiveness in your heart. He will tempt you to be lustful. He will tempt you with all these things. We have to conquer him and submit to God, and the devil will flee. And then we have to crucify our flesh. The enemy will fight hard, but you must be stronger and fight harder. And God will be right next alongside of you, strengthening you and giving you grace through it. And I know some people justify this. This isn't part of the writing, but some people justify it as, oh, well, we wage war against the flesh. Yes, we do. But we should not walk in the flesh. We should walk by the Spirit. But some people choose to walk by the flesh, which means gratifying the desires of their flesh rather than gratifying God's desires. And what happens is occasionally our flesh will try to rise up, and we have to crucify it right then and there. So when we battle the flesh, it does not mean that we consistently give into it and justify ourselves. The righteous man may fall 7 times, but he gets back up. He gets up, he repents, he gets back up into doing the right thing. A wicked man will just stay in a habit of doing the wrong thing and claim, oh, but we're always fighting against the flesh. Well, yeah, you're justifying your actions. Will we always have to deal with it? Absolutely. But that's why we have to take up our cross daily and follow Christ. We have to daily crucify that flesh and tell it no.